Hello?
Welcome.
This is the Two Cities.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Hello. Welcome to another full episode of Tales of Two Cities. Now, this episode might seem different from the rest of our other episodes, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that Nikki and I are swamped. We are swamped beyond belief to the point that any form of Skype messaging or any type of messaging in general is causing tears. Another reason is that a follower, Shaggy from Paraholics, sorry if I got that wrong, wanted to know more about his state, Texas. So we're offering a special Tales of Two Cities episode in which we will compare paranormal episodes between two cities in Texas. And lastly, the third reason is because we have something to introduce to you. Updates, people. Updates. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this new and evolved thing. First, let me get the easy thing out of the way. Like I said before, Nikki and I are swamped. Nikki is dealing with the struggles of getting a PhD, and I've recently have been spreading myself too thin. That leaves us with the dilemma of finding time to Skype with each other and share our stories. However, with this problem, there are solutions. We decided that we will continue doing our system of sharing and comparing two cities, but we will do so through our own individual recordings, and then merge it together in one big recording. It will sound slightly different, but it's the best we can do. So, for example, I will give you some updates, I will share Nikki's Texas story, and then I'll introduce mine. Once Nikki and I are back to normal with our schedules, we'll go back to Skyping. Next, let me go over the biggest thing that we need to go over. We've created a Patreon. While the idea of asking for money literally makes Nikki and I cringe, we are facing some realities that we didn't see coming. We are running out of funds to help us evolve. Nikki works 2 state-funded school jobs, and I've recently gotten fired for something that was literally out of my control. We are doing our best, but we're facing some hurdles. The truth is, we don't want to ask you for money, but in order to progress, we need your help. Our subscription to SoundCloud runs at $85 a year. Nikki's mic cost her around $200 or more, and I'm having trouble balancing editing, writing, researching, and job hunting all at the same time. We want to create more and better content. It takes time and money for us to make an episode, and we want to be better and improve. We know we could eventually create a weekly schedule if we had some help. We want better equipment. We know everything is wonky. We know, and we're sorry. By earning more money, we could get me a better mic and get the proper editing equipment needed to make a pristine sound. We want to design merch. It's been a thought process since the beginning. It would be cool to see people all over the world sharing in the fun things that are strange. Lastly, our ultimate goal is to earn enough money for tours, but that might be a reach. So here's how this will benefit you. We are offering 5 reward programs for you to contribute to if you please. For example, for $1 a month, you could be a skeleton. You will get a heads up on our episodes and a copy of our scripts. $5 a month, you can be part of the Graveyard team, which allows you to have all the fun of the skeleton benefits, plus a mini episode every 2 weeks from either me or Nikki. For $10 a month, you can be part of the Shipyard team, which gives you the perks of the first 2 teams, plus 10% off our merch once a month. For $15 a month, you can be part of the Spooky Ghost program and get all of the perks of the first 3 groups, plus 1 small spooky item sent to your address once a month. Don't worry, it changes each month. Lastly, you could be a monster. For $25 a month, the monsters get everything, plus a shout out or a decision on what full episode they would like to hear. Basically, you could get the shirts off our backs if you wanted to. The thing is, if you help us grow, we will show our thanks tenfold. We are trying our hardest to flourish, and we know you could help us on our way. However, we don't want you to think that we're here for your money. We're not. But we do see this creation budding, and we're trying our best to get it the nutrients it needs. With your help, it can cultivate to be so much better. We will post Patreon, on our Facebook, Instagram, website, Twitter, all the joyous means of social media. And above all, thank you for getting us to this point. Now, here's a special episode dedicated to you, Shaggy. Thank you so much for this great suggestion. Here are tales of two cities from the Lone Star State.
The origins of our first tale come from Brian Bethel, a Texas reporter. Bethel claims to have encountered two unsettling black-eyed kids in Abilene, Texas. Bethel claims another person had a similar experience in Portland, Oregon, so maybe this isn't just a Texas thing. But for Bethel, he pulled his car into a parking lot of an Abilene movie theater to use the light emanating from the marquee to write a check. Already it seems a little strange, but we'll keep going. While filling out the lines of the check, two young children walked up to his car. He guessed they were between 9 and 12 years old. They knocked on the window and asked for a ride home to grab cash for the movie. Bethel was concerned and scared. Then the children claimed they didn't have a gun, adding to the terror and suspicion. Who just announces that they don't have a gun? But it was when they looked him in the eye that he recognized their deep, black eyes. He described them as the sort of eyes one sees these days on aliens or in bargain basement vampires on late-night television. Some believe black-eyed kids, or BEKs, are creepypasta, stories that are perpetuated on the internet for amusement. But others believe they're real. Brian Bethel told his story on a television show, Monsters and Mysteries in America, and wrote a follow-up article for the Abilene Reporter News to substantiate his story and deny the claims of creepypasta. Snopes lists black-eyed children as a legend, while others think these children may be aliens, vampires, or ghosts. I found a list of the creepiest black-eyed children stories on Reddit, and I thought I'd share some of them with you. No Sleep 2012 explains, so I decided to investigate this legend, and I found a list of the creepiest black-eyed children's stories on Reddit. I thought I'd share with you some of the creepiest. No Sleep 2012 explains, it almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog Lucy barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter, staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over a house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything. Our roommate, a creak from the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared, and I figured it should work with a puppy too. I opened the door and she raced to the front door. She stood there, snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I'd never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened the baby gate blocking the doorway, planning to open the door and show her that everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumped towards me, and when I touched the metal, she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was afraid and backing down. As her mannerisms changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I'd been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole. I can't explain why I looked, but I did. And outside were two kids. One was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21, and she looked to be 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde, and she wore it long, about mid-back, with long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and was thin-looking, and a thin, olive-colored style pullover hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl who looked to be about 3 or 4 in the same style jeans and a button-down ivory cardigan. The smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to one my daughter has, as was the style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled, nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless. She held her head tilted downward, and I couldn't see her eyes. She said, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black, or midnight blue, or dark purple. They were otherworldly. She said, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I've never been one to believe in these things. As a staunch atheist and skeptic when it comes to the paranormal, I'd written off many a ghost story from friends and family members eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe it. Still, I couldn't rationalize my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. Slowly and silently, I backed away from the door, Lucy still cowering at my ankles. She kept talking. "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step, the tone changed. At first, she seemed polite. When I took a second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in. I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door, and I inched backward, though something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back to the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered up the window, locked the door, and sat in the dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more, and then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I haven't slept right since. I know from reading about the black-eyed kids, they can't just come in without your permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me to forget it, but this lingering feeling of sadness, this dread when the house is silent at night, this fear of a knock at the door, this tells me otherwise. Next, we have a story from Sarah Beth 11. So it had been a slow trick-or-treat night in the neighborhood that evening, which is pretty odd in itself. We usually have kids from different areas dropped off in ours and have a constant parade at the door. That night, I'd say we had no more than 8 or 10 groups of kids come by the entire night. It was about 9:30, and my husband and I were sitting in our family room watching some of those ghost shows based on supposedly actual events. Like I said, I don't believe in that stuff, but I do like a good ghost story now and then, and it was Halloween and all. We hadn't had any activity at the door in over half an hour, and it was getting so late, so we decided to turn the porch light off and let our dog Chloe out of her crate. Chloe is an American bulldog and very docile. We only put her in the crate because we were afraid she tried to get out to play with the kid, and I didn't want to have to chase after her down the street. Also, we didn't want her to scare any of the kids because she would look a little intimidating to younger kids. So I turned the light off outside, let Chloe out, and she followed me back to the couch and lay down at my feet. It was getting close to 10 p.m. when my husband decided he'd had enough fun for the night and was going to go upstairs, take a shower, and get ready for bed. After all, it was Thursday, and he still had to get up early the next day. My teenage son was out with his friends at a local haunted house and wasn't expected back for another hour or so that left me alone on the couch with Chloe. Now, just because I don't believe doesn't mean that those shows don't freak me out a bit, and being alone now watching, I'd have to say I was kind of on the edge, as it were. It wasn't after long I heard the upstairs water for the shower turn on when there came a light knock at the front door. My initial reaction was, what the hell, really? It's almost 10, go home. But soon an uneasy feeling came over me. Why the knock? Our doorbell glows in the dark without the porch light. It would be extra obvious to anyone there. I paused. I couldn't really just ignore it. Our front door is a big beveled glass panel, and anybody right at the door could see in enough to see someone was in the family room watching TV. It would be pretty rude for me to just sit there and not answer it. Knock, 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 again from the door. I glanced down at Chloe, and she was gone. My gaze followed her usual path to the front door, expecting her to be on her way there as she normally does. Nothing. She wasn't there. I stood up to look around the room better and found her crouching by the back door, like she was wanting out. However, she never asked to go out like that. She always comes and licks my hand or puts her head on my knee. This was totally out of character for her, and I have to say heightened my anxiety. "Chloe, crate," I said. She just turned back and looked at me like, "Hell no, lady, I ain't moving." I agree with Chloe. I yelled up to my husband, but if he was already in the shower, I knew there was no chance of him hearing me. Knock, knock, knock. About the same time, a car drove down the street and cast just enough light on the door to where I could see the silhouettes of 2 small children through the glass. I instantly felt relief. It was just some kids, probably a couple of my neighbors on their way back home that wanted to stop by and show me their costume or something. I headed to the door and looked back to make sure Chloe wasn't going to follow. What a great watchdog, I thought to myself, as she just sat there. I turned on the porch light when I got to the door, and sure enough, I could see through the glass that it was a couple of pretty small kids. A little late for such young ones, I thought, and I began to wonder about what kind of parents would let their kids run the streets that late at night. I opened the door enough to where I could block Chloe's escape if she wanted to grow balls, which was only about 2 feet. What struck me immediately as odd was the kids weren't wearing any costumes. They were in normal street clothes. Also, no customary trick-or-treat either. I began to feel very uneasy again. was a boy and a girl. The girl to my left was older, I'd say about 11 or 12. I could tell she was blonde, but I couldn't make out any distinct features as our lights are from high above on the columns at the front of the porch, so most of the light was coming from behind them. I had not opened the door wide enough for any light from inside to hit them directly. The boy was younger, and about a foot shorter, I'd say 8 or 9, and looked to have light brown hair. The girl very politely spoke. "Ma'am, can we please come inside and use your phone to call our mom?" And the pit of my stomach was telling me something was wrong. What kid, even at that age, doesn't have a cell phone for their own use these days? I couldn't remember the last time I'd had anybody ask to use my home phone. Hun, don't you have a phone of your own you can call your mom on?" I asked. This was really getting weird. Both kids turned to look at one another like they were going to say something to one another, but neither of them spoke. They both turned back to me, and the girl said, "Ma'am, my cell phone battery doesn't have any charge left on it. Can we please come inside and call our mother? We're out here alone and my brother is scared." I have to admit, there were two competing feelings going on inside me. The first, that of a mother's heart that wanted to help these two small children get to their mom. The other, a sinking fear in my gut that was keeping the other feeling at bay. It was then I noticed that during the short conversation, I'd already opened the door a few extra inches, which I was completely unaware of doing. I stopped. "Honey, why don't you give me your mother's number and I can call her myself?" Another pause, and they again looked at one another. After a short moment, they turned back to me and the girl said, "Ma'am, my little brother has to use your bathroom. Can we please come inside while you call our mom?" And with that last statement, the little girl moved closer towards the door, like she was just going to come walk in past me. As she did, she stepped into the light coming from inside the house, and I got my first real good look at her. Solid, jet black eyes. That's all I could see. That motherly instinct was gone and replaced by terror. I don't think I've ever felt in my life. I could feel every hair on my arms and back of my neck standing at attention. I closed the door to where my face was just able to stick out. The little girl stopped and again pleaded, "Please, ma'am, we're really scared and alone out here. We have to come inside. Please help us." Then, like on cue, both kids began to whimper and cry. That's when the fear took over and I shut and locked the door. "I'll call your mom if you give me the number," I shouted through the door, "but I'm not letting you in my house." I could still see them stand there on the porch, just staring at me through the beveled glass pane. Part of me wanted to run upstairs to my husband, but the bigger part didn't want to lose track of where they were. That would have freaked me out even more to not know where they were. After what seemed like forever, but probably only a few seconds, I decided I'd call my neighbor that lives across the street. As I made my way to the side table by our couch to the phone, I glanced back at the door. Chloe was nowhere to be found. We later found her in the guest room under the bed. When I got to the phone and started to look for contact info, it was only then that the kids stepped away from the door and began to walk to the street. As they did, I walked to the door to get a better look to see where they went, still not calling my neighbor. If you get close enough to the glass, you can see out enough to make out people's shapes, but you can't see much detail. Of course, standing that close to the door would make you pretty obvious to anyone standing outside looking in. From the door, I could see the kids were still standing under the street lamp nearest my house, staring at me. So I lifted my phone to my ear after calling. Only then did the kids start to walk down the street. I met my neighbor out under the lamp once he was there, but the kids were nowhere to be seen. Like I said, I don't believe in any of this stuff, and had never even heard about black-eyed kids before talking to my friend. What I really think, what I have to think, is these kids were really yanking people's chains on Halloween night. But I will say this for them, they were really good at it. They scared the shit out of me and my dog. Halloween Warding tells the story from an outsider's perspective. This really freaked me out. Yesterday, I noticed my neighbor hadn't put out all his Halloween decorations, lights, etc. The past 2 years I've lived next to him, he's gone all out for Halloween. I don't know him well. He's younger, single, but I know he likes kids, not in a creepy way. His brother and sister-in-law and their kids are always visiting him, and he plays with the 3 young nieces and nephews out in the yard. So anyway, I got home from work and was walking up my driveway, and I saw him outside and said something like, "Hey man, you better get your Halloween stuff up, or that house up the street is going to beat you for best decorations." Kind of smiles sheepishly and says that he's actually going to keep his house dark this year and just put out candy. I asked him if he was going out of town, but he said no. Something happened last year that really scared him. Now, I was concerned for my own safety if some weirdos were coming around the neighborhood, which is a pretty safe neighborhood with tons of young families living here, so I asked him what happened. He said last year he had his brother's family over so they could trick-or-treat in the neighborhood, since they live in an apartment complex that doesn't do much for Halloween. He had a bunch of kids come to the door, like always. His family took off around 10:30, and there were only a few older trick-or-treaters, but by 11:30, they were pretty much done. So he was inside watching TV, and the doorbell rings. He grabs the candy bowl and heads over, noticing that it's a little past midnight, and it's pretty rude for trick-or-treaters to still be out. But he notices he hasn't turned off all his decoration lights yet, so his house is still a beacon. He swings the door open and is about to yell boo or something to freak them out, but stops dead when he sees the kids at the door. He said one was probably around 13 or 14, and the other 16 or 17, both boys. They weren't dressed up, but he remembers the older one was wearing a flannel checkered shirt. He was immediately overcome with uneasiness, like opening the door was a huge mistake. They just stared at him, and he noticed that they had really big irises and dilated pupils. He couldn't even see the whites of their eyes, so he figured they were contact lenses. He was frozen there, holding the candy bowl, like he couldn't slam the door in their faces as much as he wanted to. He nervously tried to smile at them, hoping they would break character and ask for candy or something. The younger one said they'd gotten lost and needed to come in and use his phone. That was when he closed the door more than halfway on them and said, "Nope, sorry." And the older one said something like, "Can we just wait in your house until our parents come get us?" But by then, he was convinced that his life was in danger and these kids must be high or something, intending to rob him, and he just kept mumbling, "Nope, sorry, good night," as he inched the door closed and locked it. He told me he was so fucking scared at that point that they were going to try to break in through one of his windows or something, but he looked through the peephole and they had turned to leave. He watched TV with the volume really low so he could hear any sounds at all, and he said he stayed up until like 5 a.m. because he was too scared to go to bed and drop his guard. The whole time he's telling me this, I'm thinking, oh my god, this sounds so familiar, just like Black-Eyed Kids, the urban legend. Then I thought, hey, maybe this dude is trying to scare me because after all, he does have the Halloween spirit. So I'm looking at him incredulously, but trying not to seem too gullible. So I'm like, man, this is really crazy. It sounds like Black-Eyed Kids. He just looks up at me blankly. The what? Is that a movie or something? And I said no, but I told him to go look it up online. Like an hour later, I get a knock on my door, and admittedly almost jumped out of my skin thinking it's a demon child. It was my neighbor, and his eyes were freaking huge. He swears to me up and down that he'd never heard of Black-Eyed Kids before. It's so similar to what happened to him. This one terrifies me the most. It's from Cutie Patootie, but it explains. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm in my early 20s, I just moved into this apartment, and I tend to live a very private life. I don't even have a Facebook account. I work during the day at a grocery store. Okay, so I'm walking up a flight of stairs to get to my apartment, and I hear these kids laughing, and then I heard whispering. It was kind of late, so I thought that it was weird, but I ignored it and walked to my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor. I was getting ready to open my balcony door, and it was really muggy in my apartment. I walked over to the door and pulled my blinds, and 2 kids are fucking staring back at me. Sorry for the F-bomb, but I'm still shaking. I screamed and backed away, smashing my leg into the table. They were both in blue jeans, and the oldest, he was taller, had a green shirt with white stripes, and the younger had a buttoned-up light blue shirt. The oldest one touched the sliding door. "Hey, miss, can you let us in?" The younger one just keeps looking around. I still just stared at them. I was finally able to say, "How'd you get on my balcony?" I walked to the door and noticed how excited the older one got the closer I moved to the entrance. "Can you let us in?" I wasn't thinking. I unlocked the door, and when I looked up, their eyes, you guys, their eyes were black. The entire eye. I quickly locked the door and told them I had to call the police because my door was jammed and I couldn't unlock the door, so I called the police, and the oldest boy pleaded with me the entire time to let them in. The police arrived about an hour ago. They came in and walked to the balcony. When they opened my balcony door, nothing was there. They looked down and saw 2 children. They were running in the parking lot away from the building. The police took a report, and they said they had to have had help getting up there, and that they would question the neighbors. I'm freaking out. I'm crying, and I don't want to stay here, but then again, I don't feel safe going outside right now. And Pyrick Lancaster warns, I helped them once. Never, ever, under any circumstances, do it. I'm not sure what they do, but it feels as if they're ripping your soul out. They get really close to you, and you get amazingly drowsy. If it weren't for my girlfriend showing up mid-invasion and kicking them out, I would probably be dead. I didn't even see the black eyes until I'd let them in. They're getting smarter. I think normal kids are scary. Black-eyed kids will keep me from ever visiting Abilene, Texas.
When I was a kid, I had a strange thought. Well, I've had a lot of strange ideas, but that's not the point right now. The point is, I had a thought that maybe, just maybe, in crowds, what you saw was a mixture of ghosts and people. There's so much that surrounds us that isn't quite certain. So much that surrounds us that could be paranormal. Like, for example, in our lifetime, we will pass 25 serial killers. So, the idea of walking around with ghosts doesn't seem like much of a stretch. Well, for the students of El Paso High School, that theory is a reality. The school was built in 1916 and it spans 9 acres. It is the oldest operating school in Texas and it is known as the Lady of the Hill since it sits on the mountainside at the foot of the Franklin Mountains overlooking parts of Mexico. Wikipedia states, quote, "Inside the front entrance, the hallway that circles the rear of the large auditorium has coffered low ceilings and classical columns. The main corridor floor was of marble. The other hall floors were of quarter-sawed oak, and the classroom floors were made of hard maple. Most of the toilet and shower rooms were furnished in tile, marble, and porcelain," end quote. Probably the most insane fact of the school was that in 1922, the board members of the school were the Ku Klux Klan. They had elected to change the school's name to honor its Texas hero, Sam Houston, President of the Republic of Texas and Governor of Texas. El Paso High School became the Sam Houston High School, but was changed back after a year because of the strong community protest. In February 1923, the Ku Klux Klan was defeated by its local polls, and the presence of El Paso soon died out. Now, when it comes to the paranormal, El Paso, Texas High School has a lot to tell. I feel to neatly explain it all, I'll do so section by section, starting with the girl. Girl is the most popular and prominent image when describing the hauntings of this old high school, and like most ghost stories, the origin of her demise is quite grim. Some have said that she fell from the auditorium's balcony, either by accident or by suicide. One of the stories states that she was a cheerleader that got dumped, slit her wrists, and then jumped from the balcony. Many have seen a ghostly woman jumping from the balcony, vanishing before her spirited body hit the ground. Others have seen a woman waving at them. The sound of sobbing can be heard in the hallway even though nobody is there. People have spotted a young girl crying in the hallway, only to disappear when approached. Now, with the 4th floor, the rumor states that the cheerleader threw herself from the girl's bathroom, not the balcony. You say tomato, I say tomato. The most famous claim to paranormal evidence of the ghost girl is that in the trophy case, the 1985 class photo contains an odd and blurry photo of a girl, prominently fuzzier than the rest. Many claim that no girl was standing next to them when they took that photo. However, she is there, clear as day. I'll put the photo on our Instagram and you can see for yourself. Leave a comment, tell me what you think. About 15 years ago, a few faculty members were trapped in the school during the snowstorm. Some decided to explore the school and found a small opening in the tunnels of the basement. They found a brick wall crumbling away due to time. One of the teachers broke open the wall and they found a classroom. The class was small and dusty. There were antique desks, old textbooks, and notebooks containing students' writing. While the discovery would have made anyone excited, one of the notebooks caused shivers to run down all of the teachers' spines. The notebook belonged to a girl, and it contained pages upon pages of a boy's name, with flower and hearts circling around it. The final page had a suicide note. Several faculty members have noted to have a conversation with a sad girl in a blue dress, only to realize that she is levitating in the air. Moving from the girl comes the football field. Supposedly, a football player broke his neck during the game. He, of course, died, but now many claim to see his ghost running along the field, probably hoping for a better future that would never come. I think the thing that frightens us the most is the idea of us not knowing. We don't know who those mysterious children are. We don't know what will happen to us in the future, and we don't know if the person we're talking to is real or not. When we question our reality or our truth, we become weak and incapable of knowing what to do next. comprehension is our strength. When we lose that, what can we really rely on? The song is Shadowlands 4 Breath by Kevin Macleod. He's licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. You can find his work on creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. You can find more about us and our other episodes on our Facebook page, website, Instagram, and our email at talesofthe2citiespodcast@gmail.com. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. It really helps us a lot. And also, thanks.